are Skeleton Chariots, including Archer Chariots, any good in patch 5.2. Apparently this channel has some chariot fans out there, and I too am pretty bullish on hard-charging chariots. The skeleton ones are high-entity versions, but they have decent armor, and that is not something everything in this faction has. That said, they do have their weak points, so I'll go over all of that, as well as the ways you can buff them to pretty insane levels. Recruited by chariot building, which culminates in the Screaming Skull Catapult. The regular chariots come in at 12 chariots on Ultra unit scale, with 7,032 health split between them for 580 per entity. While that's Minotaur range, these aren't Minotaurs. Armor is 80, very respectable as a starting figure. Leadership is 55, which is respectable enough, but which leads to crumbling if things go the other way for long enough. Speed starts at 74, charge speed 105, so there's almost no difference between the raw speed here and with horsemen, albeit horsemen can turn around faster and are smaller and narrower units. Melee attack begins at 22, which I can't call unusual for a chariot. In pitched melee, the attack interval is the standard 4. Splash target size is actually very large, so even big bro chariots will get splashed to dilute the damage, but the maximum targets actually damaged in a splash is 2. This, then, is the true constraint for the unit, and while this can be stretched during a successful charge with collision damage operating, the simple fact is that the unit's bite is restrained in pitched melee. Melee defense starts at 24, which is not unsurprising for a chariot, and which isn't great, but it's also not terrible. Weapon strength is given as a mere 34, split between base 24 and armor piercing 10, with a bonus versus infantry of 12. Charge bonus is 58, and mass is 1100. So between the charge bonus and the anti-infantry helping out in pitched melee, it's blindingly obvious that not only is this an anti-infantry unit, it's also very focused on annihilation of lesser armored infantry troops, although something has to be really stupidly armored to reduce the damage from a clean charge down to acceptable levels. Those units exist, but unbraced infantry or non-anti-large infantry are likely to get smacked around. Now, the Archer version has 100% the same stats except for the presence of ranged. We might generally call this a good thing, but that means if you lose an entity before it's emptied its arrows, you've lost both sources of damage. That's no fun. So you're going to be much more guarded about losing the Archer Chariots. So ammunition starts at 30 volleys, range 140, equal to horse archers. Missile damage is given as 60 officially, but each arrow does 23 base and 13 armor piercing. This is a much higher level of armor piercing than skeleton archers, although horse archers have a smidgen. Reload time is 6, which means you'll burn through the higher ammo count, and also accounting for the missile strength over time average being this high. 1 arrow per chariot, which is good to note since, let's say, Dark Elves would fire 2, right? Total accuracy is given as 30, so better than usual to start with. Calibration distance is 120, so most of the normal range. Calibration area of 4 isn't awful if you're firing at mass. There is no arrow penetration. Having said that, these stats are pretty good for what you would like out of an Archer Chariot skirmisher. Unload early and often, less damage being stopped by armor, and then once you're empty, you still have regular chariot capability. Let's keep that in mind and keep going. The units cause fear, can hide in forest, have undead features, and the chariot archers are 360-degree fire whilst moving. This is good to know, though if you're microing hard, you'll want to be selective, literally and figuratively, about the targets you want to shoot at before you run draw. In the tech tree, Master Charioteers at 3 pips grants plus 8 melee attack, plus 12 flat charge bonus, and 8% reload time reduction. This is where we see the design in play. Melee attack 22 becomes 30, with a bonus versus infantry of 12 still useful, and charge bonus 58 becomes 70. The reload time doesn't quite hit the cap, but it's getting there. For rank 7 and above chariot units, Dune Rider adds plus 10 armor, lifting them to 90, melee attack plus 5 again, and physical resistance 10% for good measure. In the tech tree, in the Wisdom of the First Dynasty, Runic Inscription grants plus 8 charge bonus, 15% extra ammunition for the Archer version, and grants 10% more reload time reduction to blow through that ammo even faster. Now we really are butting against the cap. The Ossuary Dirge, which also buffs Nehekara warriors, grants plus 5 melee attack and plus 5 melee defense. And First Dynasty Plans adds plus 10 more armor and plus 10% weapon strength, where every bit helps. Remember, the initial weapon strength is just 34. This means bonus versus infantry 12 is an over 33% increase in weapon strength, and this all feeds on each other. Are we done? Goodness no! You'd expect Settra can buff them, and he does, to the tune of plus 5 melee attack and being able to grant Vanguard deployment, though one of the Canopic Jar bought heralds grants this too. This is something that otherwise the chariots do not get, which puts them behind skeleton horsemen and horse archers in that one area. But Settra also gets the benefits of Petra the Great Father. Thing is, this blessing is available to all generic Tomb Kings, even the ones unlocked with the tech tree, so it's available widely. This will grant plus 8 melee defense on top of the rest. I'll be putting up footage or at least imagery of what my chariots looked like late in a Settra campaign, and yes, it looks pretty stupid, but I'm still on the fence about trying to doom stack them, okay? They have late game problems in terms of their ability to breach armor, but on the other hand, if they can duel even in pitch melee decently well, doesn't that mean you can leave them there? Well, you can, but they're not going to ever outgrow the maximum splash of 2 targets. And that's a problem you have to address with the rest of your army. That's the downside with a unit that gets buffed through the roof by one lord. There are still limitations. Having said that, you're still much more likely to rule over opposition. Literally! As long as you acknowledge the weaknesses and work with and around them, you can have a reliable method of crushing normal infantry, and while disengaging does get messier with certain types of enemies, well, it's like this. The fact you're dealing with a relatively high armor, relatively low entity unit means you can drop mass damage spells right on top of them, and they'll come out much less damaged than what you're trying to annihilate. Often you have to use single entity monsters for this purpose, or precious lords and heroes, putting them at high risk. This is a tier 1 unit, or if the archers, a tier 2 unit. Look for these combos and make the most out of them. That's how you go from the unit getting good to your army being great. Take care, and have fun rolling away with victory!